This is our podcast. We have a podcast. We talk about shit and we talk about stuff, but we mostly just talk a lot in our podcast. On today's episode, anime.
That's good. I like that. That's a weird way. I would have gone with. No, I like what you said. So, my whole life, I've kind of liked anime, and I think it comes from a place of shame, really. Like I don't know. I think it's just there's this trope that people who like anime tend to be either outsiders or counterculture or just kind of weird. And as I got older, I thought that's just stigma, man. That's just stupid stigma about, something that comes from another culture or another part of the planet, or is just like not as, mainstream. But then I got a little older and I went, no, it definitely attracts a type of person. And I don't know why. It just does. So, I don't know. Have you watched anime? Is our leading question.
Well, okay, I should preface this by saying, like, in the realm of anime, I am a noob. I believe, this is what I wrote down. My anime, is there an accent on the E? I don't know. Knowledge consists of Pokemon, some very vague Dragon Ball Z and Digimon references.
Yep.
And one time I read a manga about a ballet school.
Sick.
And that's about it. I remember always thinking that it was, like, very sexualized, which, I don't know, I guess
it is.
I just didn't find that interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I also remember thinking in high school, the kids that liked anime, I was like, you guys are weird.
Yep.
And they were a little bit fucked up. For other reasons, not the anime. But it was a common denominator, just putting that out there.
It is.
And a lot of my friends like a lot of my friends growing up have liked anime, and that's cool. Like, I really like Pokemon. Mm-hmm. But I imagine that, like, in the world of anime, that's like saying, I like Taylor Swift. Like, it's like super probably white. It's like the most white bread of anime. I'm not sure. I don't know about this, Arca. Is it cool to like Pokemon in the world of anime?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's uncool. It's just like baby's first anime for our generation. Not so. I don't think it's like that for like people who get into anime now because it didn't have.
Oh, and Sailor Moon.
Yeah, Sailor Moon, 100%. You're basically describing the anime that came out during our childhood, right?
The ones that were on YTV.
Exactly. Good old YTV. So we kind of grew up in an interesting phase where we got the anime that was mostly for young teens, whereas prior to that, the main waves and there's going to be a theme in our episode that people who know more about anime are going to be seething hearing what I say sometimes, and it's just you're going to get over it. But so the earliest anime that's the most popular tends to be more towards adults, and then young children, and then our childhood. So
okay.
So like things like I think Ghost in the Shell was and Akira during the 80s were like huge sci-fi things that made it over across the sea, if you may. And then a bunch of like, and I think children's cartoons were before that too, of just like, God, I can't remember their names because I never liked them, but like there's this little robot boy, there's a bunch of Gundam stuff, there's like, I don't know if those were always for children, but it felt like it. And like Power Rangers and stuff is like just Japanese shows that were just ported into American audiences. So like
Power Rangers.
Yeah, Power Rangers.
I didn't even think about that.
I forget what they're called, but it's absolutely just Japanese, which makes a lot of sense. And no, it worked pretty good. It's pretty funny and weird. So we kind of grew up in a weird kind of phase where anime was starting to get more and more popular, but not at a rate that it wasn't stigmatized. And even now, there's still stigma. So let's deal with a few.
What? Well, okay, as like an outsider who doesn't know very much about anime, the big stigma that I see is I feel like a lot of the characters especially the women
Mm-hmm.
or female presenting characters, because I know that a lot of them sometimes are not humans,
Mm-hmm.
are very fetishized and sexualized a lot.
Absolutely.
Which to me kind of like, well, that was one of the reasons for me growing up that I was like, I'm okay, I'll pass. I feel like if I got caught with some of that, my parents would be like, what is this, Hilary? So...
Absolutely. So there's a few features. Let's start with that, because that is like the biggest thing. And whenever I say I say I like anime, that's the first kind of hurdle of like, yeah, it's super sexist and kind of horny, and I'm really sorry about that. And for some of these recommendations that I'll give later is going to be followed up with, yeah, I'm sorry that it's sexist and horny at times, because it's almost like an unavoidable aspect of it. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of reasons for it, and I'm going to skip some of the more common ones because I don't think they're good reasons. Like, some people will say it's just because the Western world is prudish towards this, and there's nothing wrong with that, which I don't think makes sense. Also, there's an argument that it's just an aspect of Japanese culture to make fun of these things or like find these things humorous, which I also don't think it's a good argument. Like, when I was a teenager
Okay.
or a preteen, tits were funny and the best, but like that doesn't mean that's a good argument for everything should have boobs, right?
For everyone should be showing their nipples all the time.
Absolutely. I think the best explanation that someone else made, and someone much smarter than me, but I really like, is that to understand anime, you got to kind of understand pulp. And by pulp, I mean like, Pulp Fiction, like any form of mass-produced, cheap, and very, very unregulated media, right? Like early comic books or romance novels or like all this other trash.
Yeah, like Harlequins.
Yeah. And the defining traits of them is that they don't tend to be regulated by a board. They don't tend to have creative interference. And they don't tend to really be interested in dealing with, like, the themes that it finds fun. Like, if you pulled out an old detective book from, I don't know, the past, and I'm sure even more modern ones to a certain extent, like, there's a lot of really questionable shit that happens in that. There's a lot of alcohol abuse. There's a lot of racism. There's a lot of sexism. There's a lot of sexual assault that's just played off as just, that's what happens to this character. And it's not that these things... I don't want to say that... I want to choose my words, because I'm not defending the use of these, because I think it's, if beyond anything else, lazy writing, and at worst, advocating for like horrible things. But it's that these things aren't concerned, about politics like that. They just find these things exciting, It's exciting to have a gruff, patriarchal character who smokes too much, drinks too much, backhands women and tells them to put them back in the place, and then gets into a gunfight where they almost die. Like, it's not about discussing the power structures or the ideas of these characters. It's about like action and and wow, oh. In the same way like that an 80s action movie is super rapey and it doesn't give a shit, because like that's not what it's interested in talking about. So
Yes.
yeah. So the things you're gonna like when you deal with anime, these kind of things are more in your face because they suffer from this pulp, because they're mass-produced most of the time. Less so nowadays, but the majority of them were just mass-produced with little regulation. And the creators were like, fuck, man, let's make this scene more awesome by being really male-gazy and having this really, really scantily clad woman murder someone, So, I mean, the end thing is always going to be, I'm sorry, it sucks, and it upsets me too. And there are very specific animes that I've watched that I don't put on lists like the one I'm going to give you, because it would take more than an hour for me to set you up for it in a way that you'd be ready.
Really?
Yeah, that are really, really good stories, but like Like, I have to do the whole. You've shown a friend of yours something, and you're sitting there, and they're watching it, and you're not watching it because you've seen it so many times, but you're watching them, and you get painfully
Right.
aware of how quiet the room is,
Right.
and you're just like, it gets better, I swear.
Yeah, or you just don't know what their reaction is.
Absolutely.
Every time I go to a musical with a family member, because they're like sitting there in silence or politely clapping, and I'm like sobbing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no,
Absolutely.
I understand that definitely.
So
Especially if the person that you're inducting into whatever, like if you were to sit me down and have me watch an anime, you would probably yeah, I can definitely understand that.
absolutely. So let's look through a few more features of anime that are kind of unique to anime, but also are not. It's fun to analyze something that is like separate from normal culture because for one reason or other, because it lets you think of things that you wouldn't think about of a regular TV show. If your friend said, come watch this show, you wouldn't ask these same things. So let's talk about the most obvious one that nerds get really strangely aggressive about is subs versus dubs. Which means, do you watch your anime with Japanese audios and subtitled in English, or do you watch it dubbed over in English?
Oh, I don't know. I guess I don't. Are you asking me? Because I don't have a
Oh
preference.
no,
I would say,
I mean, I paused and I shouldn't have. Hold on, Hilary. Let's pause for a second because my headphones disconnected.
I was gonna say something sounds weird.
Hold on one second. I'm gonna call you back.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry about that. I had to dodge a call on my phone, and my headphones then disconnected so I couldn't hear you anymore.
No problem. I could still hear you a little bit, but not. It sounded murky. Okay, so I'm gonna say 13 minutes or so.
Yeah, and on mine it's 12 minutes and like 10 seconds. So what I was saying was that subs versus dubs. I mean, it's up to, if you want to give me your opinion, you can. I recognize you don't know, and frankly,
Does it matter? Am I going to be judged harshly?
No, you won't. Not by me. Someone might judge you, but who gives a shit?
Okay, well, I feel like I'm probably going to give the wrong answer anyway because people on the internet are awful. Mm-hmm. But I think personally I would rather watch a dub because it's already an animated art form. Mm-hmm. It's not like their mouths are making the exact consonants that they would be anyway. Mm-hmm. And I would rather look at the picture than have to read words because I'm the type of person where I will just read the subtitle and then not really pay attention to what's happening like on the screen, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So no, for me, I would pick a dub, not a sub.
I do too. So don't feel like that's the wrong decision. Each of them have kind of weird intricacies that I think are really funny. Whereas, the problem with a dub is that whoever redubs it in English has to work with what they call mouth flaps, which is the movement of the mouths of the animated characters. So you'll have sentences that occasionally sound really weird just because it's impossible to make it sound natural with the mouth flaps. And I think that's right. I think that's like that's not that big of a problem. In the same way, subs will sometimes have a problem with whoever subbed them, like did the subtitles, because sometimes it's fan subs, and especially when things are like released without like that, not from a big company, but released in like the day of, you get fans who have subbed it for you. Sometimes it can be kind of sketchy what you're reading of just like, oh, that doesn't make sense. Oh, that's a weird sentence.
Unless that person's a translator by nature.
Which they tend to be, but everyone makes mistakes.
Right.
Especially when it comes to nuance, right? When certain idioms don't go over, or like certain ideas don't translate as well, and you lose a bit of a character development, it kind of sucks. So for me, I'm with you. Just get it dubbed and move on. So, yeah, I think it's just the right call. Another thing that's heavily important to consider is genre, which is kind of obvious, but a lot of people lump all anime together and are surprised when, you know, as a grown-ass person at like almost 30, you put on the original Pokemon and you're like, I'm not having a good time. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably because you're watching a children's cartoon for children who they didn't really think of were going to watch it outside of, like, adults weren't going to watch it.
Well, anime is just the, like, the style, right?
Yeah. It's just animated.
That's like you could have all kinds of movies done in 3D animation, some for adults, some for children.
Yeah.
It's just it's the vehicle you're using. It's not the genre. But people label it as a genre, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. And the other difficult kind of jumping point is that a lot of genres, like some of the genres are like Japanese genres, which you have to understand. Like a really easy one would be like shonen.
Yeah.
So shonen anime is basically the majority of anime we've watched as kids. Because shonen is anime that is directed at young boys who are like about to go through puberty or going through puberty, which is a weird way of saying preteen.
Like Pokemon, like a coming of age story.
Yeah, there's a lot of coming of age stories, but a little further than Pokemon because it's often aimed at kids who are just learning how to swear and just learning about their attraction to people, like sexual attraction.
Okay. So it's kind of like, to use my English degree here, it's kind of like a Bildungsroman.
Yeah, I love that. Good.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Like coming of age.
Absolutely. But a coming of age that might not be universal. Right?
Okay.
Because it's specifically aimed at young boys. So that
and young Japanese boys.
Yeah, young Japanese boys. Very fair. So
okay.
This obviously, as we might know and understand as feminists who live on this planet, mean that it's super male gazy and also super not representative of good female characters the majority of the time.
Right.
And that's just the norm, you know? Like,
well, it's not made for girls.
Yeah, it's not made for girls. And even when it's made for girls, like Sailor Moon, there's always this weird moment that you realize that they all got naked every episode. And you're like...
Yeah.
I forgot to write this down and it came to me. It also has an age thing. And this age thing is weird because the easy way to put it is whenever I watch anime, whatever age the characters say they are, I add 2 years. And it's generally because they act a little older than you think they are. Or that they are, just in terms of, like, the amount of skill they have, or the way they talk, or the way they have passion, or the way they're sexualized. And that is pretty fucking weird sometimes. And that can be a big hurdle when you see a romance between a bunch of characters, and they're all 14, and you go, oh, this is weird.
Oh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, I want to tell you that there's less sexualization of 14-year-olds, but that would be lying to you. So instead, I'm going to tell you the same thing as I would if someone asked me, hey, is there any good North American TV shows where a bunch of 14-year-old girls are sexualized? Is don't watch that. Just don't watch that because it's fucked and you're not going to have a good time.
That's not for you to see.
Absolutely. And in the same way, and I said girls, but the same thing with boys. Like, if you want to watch stuff that I'm going to not enjoy the fact that you're telling me that you watched, that's fucking weird, man. Like, don't tell me about that shit. Like, same thing. If like, I feel that way sometimes when I watch some old Nickelodeon stuff where I'm like, I don't know how I feel about all of these young girls and the situations that they're being put into that the show keeps telling me is innocent, but I have eyeballs and I can see how it's being portrayed and I feel weird. So a lot of that kind of
like a lot of. I was gonna say some Disney Channel programming.
Yeah.
Like.
It's weird.
They do it covertly.
Yeah, covertly.
But it's like,
There's a weird theory. This is a sidetrack that doesn't. This is the side note that you now need to know about that will probably make you feel weird. But there's like this whole internet theory about how one of the people involved in Nickelodeon, I'm not going to get into names and shit, but has a huge foot fetish. And there's a lot of attention put in the young girls who acted during that time's feet. And I wish I didn't know that, because it's something that you think about whenever you watch old Nickelodeon stuff. But now you're all welcome. You're all welcome. This is just...
Wow, now I can't
bear it alone. I'm sorry. You need to carry that weight with me. And
I'm just thinking, I'm like, oh, Rugrats will never be the same.
Yeah, and if you can't think of something right now or later, the free one is that the Nickelodeon logo was a foot for a while. Like, it's weird.
The free one.
Yep, you can keep that forever.
Thanks, Arca. I'll treasure it always.
Yeah, so the end part of this whole thing about genre is that don't watch things that are made for young boys often. Because they're just not going to be interesting to you if you're not a preteen boy. Not even just in the sense that it's weird and gross, but just like, fuck it, who cares? Don't watch that shit. Then the last thing is that I would consider before getting into anime is be aware of the number of episodes of the show you're watching. This also feels like a straightforward thing, but I think we've kind of got into like a Netflix or, a streaming society where we're used to binge watching. And, we're used to ideas of seasons and Netflix kind of does that with anime though. But anime that goes long doesn't work like that. Like, we sat down...
Like, it's better in a short form?
Okay. I'm a big fan of tell your story quickly, and some of the animes I'm going to tell you about will encapsulate this. But there are animes that are 500 to 700 episodes.
What the fuck?
Yeah. We sat down...
How many seasons is that?
Well, that's the thing, is they're not really... In anime, there's not seasons always, especially with older stuff. There's arcs.
Oh.
And arcs are kind of like seasons, but thematically, Whereas, I'm trying to think of something... Like for example, if you were watching one of those reality TV shows you really liked, and instead of cutting up into seasons, you put all the episodes down flat in order, and then you found dramatic happenings, and then you that's an arc, right? So if like Becky and Chad have a one night stand that starts a lot of drama for like 8 episodes that they really milk it, that's an arc.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. With Netflix and other modern, more consumable versions, things are in seasons. But sometimes it can be weird to watch something because you'll be watching it on a website that says episode 300 and you're like, fuck, no thank you.
No thank you.
Yeah,
But then does it just become like you watch your favorite sections of the show, like the storylines or the characters that interest you most?
Yeah, that's a part of it. I think... Okay, this is an extra thing that I didn't mean to get into because none of my shows are like this, but it's a fair point. If you went and rewatched Dragon Ball Z, or if you wanted to watch Naruto, or any other show that's like heavily based on a manga, there's something called fluff. And fluff or non-canon episode, there must be there's another word for it probably that I'm forgetting, but are just episodes that are not real. That exist outside of the source material. So nothing happens of interest usually. So imagine if I told you I had a season of a TV show, but only 4 of those like 20 episodes actually mattered. Now imagine I had 8 seasons or more of this show. That's how you get.
What's the point then?
The point is that the person who is writing the manga is slower than the team of people who are making the anime, which sounds backwards when you think about it, but it's true.
It's like a Game of Thrones situation.
Exactly. That is a very good analog that I should have thought of. Yeah, a Game of Thrones situation where the people who create the animated version, for better or for worse, don't have the talent.
They're very slow.
They're very well. I'm talking about the TV show. They're faster at the TV show. It's just they're not as talented, but also they can't interrupt the status quo. Here's a really good example. If you and I were in an anime called Arca and Hilary beat up everyone every day, and in the official canon, you learned a new attack called the Super Sucker Punch, where you go on 3 or 4 dates with someone, and then you punch them right between the eyes when they least expect it. That's your most powerful attack. Now, I have to make up 10 more episodes until the story continues. During that time, you can't learn any new, more powerful attacks, right? Because if you did, it wouldn't make sense when the story started again. Also, our relationship as protagonists, let's say we have a healthy rivalry, that can't change either. Because once the fluff or the non-canon stuff stops, we need to be in the exact same emotional space as previous. So you have to have a bunch of episodes where nothing dramatic happens that changes our status as characters, and also we don't learn anything really.
Well, okay.
Yeah,
why not just build like a subplot? Why not have subplots?
You have subplots. It's just those subplots can't be really material. Because otherwise later in the show, you'd be like, why didn't they do the thing they did there? And you realize it's because that never really happened in the main story. So you can't... These characters are built as if they don't know about it. Basically, to sum it up, don't watch something that's more than, I don't know, 100 episodes.
1 million episodes.
Yeah, it's a bad idea. You're gonna hate yourself. You're not going to have a good time. And if someone puts together a YouTube video of all the best fights, you're probably going to enjoy it more. So just do that. And to be frank, even if you watched it on Netflix wouldn't tell you if it's a canon episode or not. You'd have to go on the internet and search up yourself. So it's a lot.
Really?
Yeah, it's a lot.
They don't want to help you.
No, but the thing...
Well, no, they don't. They want you to watch all their episodes.
Yeah, and also, for a lot of people...
Like, it's in Netflix's interest.
Yes, and for a lot of people, it's kind of the charm. Like, I watched Dragon Ball Z with the fluff, and my god, was it unbearably long. It was just so much bullshit to slog through. But, do you know what else happened?
Mm-hmm.
These super-powered, advanced fighters who can fly and shoot beams had an episode where they tried to get driver's license. And that was the shit. That was so
The Super
funny.
Saiyans all tried to get driver's license?
Absolutely.
So does Pokemon have fluff episodes then?
I don't actually know, because Pokemon doesn't come from a manga, so I don't think so. I'm sure it has episodes that are weaker that fans don't like, but I don't think it has fluff in that sense. But a lot of these shows...
Okay, so it's exclusive to things...
Yeah. But a lot of these shows are
It's exclusive to things
manga.
that have mangas as a source material. Okay, yeah, okay. I understand.
Also, on the last...
So, Sailor Moon.
I don't know. Is Sailor... I don't think Sailor Moon come from a manga. I'm gonna say... Apparently, in 1991, manga serial codenamed Sailor V. No, with... Yeah, okay, I think that's where it comes from, but I think it changed a little in the anime. I'm not sure. But there's also... Like, the last thing I'm going to talk about serialized manga, because that's a lot of the anime we saw, like, that was out as we were kids, like, shonen stuff, is Yu-Gi-Oh! Mm-hmm. Is a lot of these shows got censored when they came over here, which none on my list has that, because it kind of just changes the story to a certain extent sometimes. In Pokemon, they took out an episode where someone had a gun, and I think they took out an episode where Misty, the 14-year-old, is topless, which makes sense. I might not have those things exact, but I'm pretty sure it's something like that. So that's understandable. Mm-hmm. But in Sailor Moon, spoilers, the first season ends with all of the characters dying and then being reborn. And the people who dubbed it and made it for American audiences thought that was aggressive. And so they just made up what happens. They just redubbed over it and they edited stuff out and they thought that was cool. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is famous for this, but on the concept of mangas, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga was fucking hardcore because a bunch of the manga happened without a magical card game, and it involved this kid who has a dark spirit who loves playing games in his brain. And the games they played would end up with people dying or going insane regularly.
That's super fucked up for a kid's show.
Oh yeah, but it's super cool. Like it was, you'd read this shit and it would be like this guy, I don't know, this guy is like beating up his friends, so he challenges him to this like card game. Not a card game, sorry. This game where they put wads of cash on their hands and they stab through it with a knife. And each bill you pierce, you get to keep. But if you cut your hand, you get none of the money, but also you just stabbed yourself in the hand, you fucking moron. And that is so much cooler than literally anything else that you could come out of a children's card game show. So sometimes kids anime has some cool fucking shit in it.
When you look past the
horrible stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, let's go through some recommendations. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 recommendations that I would.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I would with varying different kind of themes and lengths that I would recommend to anyone if they walked up to me and they said, "Arja, recommend an anime." And I'd be like, "Ah, fuck, have one of these." So
okay,
I'm going to start with the easy one that everyone recommends because it is easy and everyone recommends it. And it is one of those things that is recommended because it's good. So there is an anime called Cowboy Bebop. And if you've ever had a friend...
Oh, I've heard about Cowboy Bebop.
Exactly. So for those who don't know, Cowboy Bebop is it's like a space cowboy thriller in a way. Not thriller, I'd say, like a sci-fi kind of film noir. And it takes we've got a team of 4 people and their dog, and they're bounty hunters. And the show kind of mainly has to do with the kind of zany adventures they get into, with a long-term arc of the characters and their development. It's a very character-driven story, and it depends on you falling in love with these characters who are very, very fascinating and are all going through some baggage. So to describe the world a little bit, it's like you've got space colonies and you've got space travel, but it also has that kind of dystopian feel where you never really see humanity outside of poverty, really. Like you do see like sometimes rich people, but it never quite feels like they're the real rich people, you know? You're always seeing like gang leaders on Mars, which is kind of like the height of humanity. But even then, you're kind of like, wow, there's a lot of poverty and violence that's just visible everywhere, you know? Our protagonists, for one reason or another, are always destitute, you know? Sometimes they don't get the bounties because, you know, they're 2 good guys and like they decide they end up seeing eye to eye with the person they were chasing. Oftentimes it's because the person who has the bounty is either killed or like just something happens out of their control. And other times it's just implied that the amount of damage that they do, that they have to pay the cops for, ends up meaning that they're penniless, you know? So there's a real like feeling of constantly failure but moving forward in the anime. There's a lot of really good martial art fight scenes. There's a lot of good like classic revolver gunplay, but there's also a lot of good spaceship battles that you kind of forget about until they happen, and you're like, shit, that's a good time. It's got a killer good jazz intro. It's got good blues and jazz feels, good harmonica. It's a great time. Like, you just need to sit down and watch the first episode and be like, this is pretty good.
Is it on Netflix?
That's a good question. I don't know. That's a good thing that I will be doing while we do this. I will look it up if it's on Netflix. The show itself is, I think, like 25 episodes. With a movie that takes place before I didn't think this would make noise. Hold on. That happens before the last few episodes because there's some shit that goes down. But let's see, is it on? Yeah, Cowboy Bebop is on Netflix.
On Netflix, okay.
Yeah. So on the levels of how sexist it is, there are shots of scantily clad women. Quite often, I think, but not enough that it's all the time. And there's a few relationships that you're kind of like, oh, he's too old for her. Yeah, there's a lot. There's only 2 lead women, and a third one who is very much the damsel character, even though she can kind of hold her own. The context that we know who she is kind of like the lost love. She's more of an idea.
She's always being rescued.
Yeah.
Oh.
She's like an idea in a character's mind, and since we don't really, it takes us a while to know the characters, it's a weird feeling. So I'm gonna put it a 3 out of 10. No, a 3 out of I don't know. A medium level of
3 out of
sexism.
10 overall, or like for sexism.
Yeah,
okay.
sexism. All of these I would say are like really good animes, so you don't have to worry about me recommending how good they are. Like, they're good. I'm not even gonna give you numbers because they're good.
Okay.
Yeah, good time. Really big fan. So that would be like, that's the easiest one everyone to watch. So next one. Next one is Hellsing Ultimate. And this is a much more aggressive anime in a lot of ways. And so I'm just going to drop the premise to you real quickly. It's aggressive in like a million different ways. But the main premise is that, first of all, vampires and supernatural shit is real, which is normal. I think that's already real, but whatever. And there is a secret society called Hellsing, named after Van Helsing, that works for the Queen, a secret order of Protestant knights, which makes it sound like there's a lot of them, but there's only like 4 members, really, whose job is it to hunt down, you know, the evil things without people finding out. The main difference is, or maybe this is pretty common, is they have a vampire named Alucard. Alucard is Dracula spelled backwards. Trust me, the show thinks it's clever doing that. It's not. Alucard is a very powerful vampire who kills other vampires using like giant guns that the show has a very, very big boner for. It loves its guns. It loves slow-mo shots of people shooting things. It loves giving its protagonist bigger and bigger and bigger guns until you think this is so ridiculous until they get a bigger fucking gun.
Oh my God.
And it's all about... It's very gory. It's very violent.
Okay.
There's a lot of blood.
Oh.
Yes, be prepared. But the premise is that this team is up against vampire Nazis. And there is nothing else you need to know.
Okay.
Yes.
Protestant knights against some vampire Nazis.
Absolutely. It is a very good case study in how to escalate and set up characters. I would describe that the show is 10 episodes, and each episode is about an hour long. So I really like it because the episodes are long, but it's very digestible because it's only 10 episodes. And each episode is kind of themed, even though it progresses the plot. It kind of deals with certain characters in certain ways. And the first 4 episodes, the first episode I find kind of weak. So I do recommend watching 2 episodes and not just the first one. But the first 4 episodes kind of set up the characters that you're going to meet and the world, and like all of these people who are crazy fighters in different ways and have like moves. Like there's a character who uses like piano wire that's almost like molecular, maybe not molecular, but like, you know, very, very, like you can't see it, and it is razor sharp, and he uses it as a weapon, which is really fucking cool. So he almost like puppet strings people with this super sharp
to death
thread. So you meet all these characters, you meet all these fighting styles, you learn about the politics, because like one of the factions is the Vatican, who sends their fucking bishops and like crusaders and stuff. You learn about the vampire Nazis, you learn about our guys, Helsing, for the first 4 episodes, and then the last 6 from episode 5 to 10 is one big fight. One giant mind-blowing fight.
A 6-episode long fight.
Like it's not just one, it's like several fights, but it's like one situation. Whereas like
a battle.
Yeah, one battle. That makes sense. Or as they would put it, a war.
Yeah.
And it just lasts the rest of the show, and no one walks away without losing almost everything. Like everyone is changed. Everyone goes through the harshest fights. It's really, really good. You really like cheer a lot of these characters on, and you really get to see them grow and develop. Is there anything else to say? Oh, the villain is really, really, really good. They're like the Nazis aren't like the way we think of modern Nazis, where they're just like alt-right scumbags who just hate women and, you know, like want to kill the Jews. It's very clear that the Nazis that lead this group use Nazism as an excuse to gain the power that they needed in order to gain the violence that they believe they are owed. Which is an interesting...
It was the most convenient...
Yeah.
It was the most convenient thing to further their cause. Oh, that sounds weird, but yeah.
There is... the show does have its opinions on Nazism here and there, but it has a theme that the Nazis... as an ideology, were kind of parasitic fools, and this new generation of Nazis are really just monsters that were bred out of these people who have no interest in either the ideology or the politics. It's almost like as
they just are interested in the killing. That's almost worse.
Yeah, it is almost worse. It is phenomenal. There is some gruesome shit that happens. Here's your content warning. There's a dead baby at one point. There's rape.
Oh,
there is there is a lot of gore. There is some very satisfying gore, and there is some unsatisfying gore. The show does play with the idea of violence as more than just for violence, like more than just as a means to an end, but violence for violence's sake. The show also likes reminding you that its protagonist's vampire is is by nature a monster, and will do some things that make you go, oh. And the show wants...
He is a monster.
Yeah, but what I like about the show is the show does not want you to feel as if this is something that it thinks is just cool. The show wants you to feel uncomfortable, and the show wants you to think about its themes of humanity and identity.
Okay, I like stuff that does that.
Yeah. We do, on terms of horniness, there's definitely horniness. One of our second, we have 3 main characters: our vampire Alucard, a fledgling vampire Ceres, and their master. Why can't I remember her name? She's the most phenomenal character. It'll come to me in a second, but Helsing is her name, anyways. But so there's 2 women and a man. And those women are the most badass women you will ever meet, but Ceres is sexualized a lot at certain points, And though it does stop after a certain point, because it does feel like fluff at the start, especially in the first episode, it is something that you kind of go, oh, that really does suck, because she is a phenomenal character, and she is kind of the audience's insert character. Saris is phenomenal. You want to see her grow. You are proud of her. You want to see her.
She's the most sympathetic.
Yeah, and the show plays with that in a very good way. Integra, thank you. Integra, Fairbooks, Wingate's Helsing is our other main character, who is fucking... Yeah, she's fucking phenomenal. It is... All of the characters are super memorable. You will never forget any of them because they're made with such love and such, like, care, and they go through such development that when you watch them, you're just like, I love all of them. So, Helsing Ultimate is my second recommendation. You'd need a week to watch it if you watch one per night. Stick it through after the first one. It's a lot, but it gets better.
Okay.
All right, so we got 4 more. I'm going to try to speed through the next 2 because they're the weaker ones.
Okay.
Really good. Psycho Pass is a TV show that's also on Netflix. Oh, we didn't check if I don't think Helsing is on... No, it's not. Helsing is not on Netflix, but you can find it on other websites if you go looking. Psychopath is a TV show that's on Netflix, I believe, still. Uh-oh. No, it's not. Okay. Well,
okay.
Psychopath is a cool TV show about a dystopian future where your probability to commit a crime is determined by an AI that measures your emotions and your chemicals and everything. And these people are hunted down by people who have a high, who are also like them, have a high chance of committing crimes, but are used as basically police dogs to hunt down worse people. They are equipped with guns, and I think this is topical, so I would I like Psychopath because it is topical in terms of police and systematic violence. In Psychopaths, the detectives and the attack dogs, if you may, have guns called Dominators. And the gun is both a weapon and a scanner. When you point it at someone, it scans how likely they are to commit a crime. And if they are not, the gun can't be used. And if they are likely to hurt someone, the gun turns into a stun gun. And you can stun them and, take care of them, give them therapy, give them medication, and, resolve the situation. However, if the AI, which is called the Sybil system, if the AI decides that this person is too far gone and too far gone to be worth saving, it will automatically... You can
just murder them?
Yes, it will turn into a lethal weapon that will explode the person. So if you hear that and your immediate reaction is, that seems like it would have some problems, then you should watch Psychopaths.
Okay. It's
sci-fi film noir. It's a good time. The other one that's really, really quick is a fun... These have been kind of more serious ones, so here's a fun romantic comedy called Love is War. I think it's Kaguya-sama Love is War, but you'll find it as Love is War. I don't think this is on Netflix either. This one is only subbed, so I'm sorry if you're watching it now. But it is a very simple premise. It is a TV show about a rich, preppy school. And the president of the student council and the vice president of the student council, who are very much crushing on each other. But their lifestyle and their world of living in kind of an aristocratic school has...
They're not a good match?
No. They're a great match. The thing is they've been convinced that love is a zero-sum game. And by that I mean that when you're in love with someone, they have power over you. So to them, There is nothing worse than admitting
It's
to the
weakness?
other person that they love them. So what did they do with this situation? Well, they scheme. They constantly scheme to set up social encounters and situations where they can pressure or trick the other person to finally admitting how much they love or like the other person. By that I mean that they will get the other person to buy a new cell phone and then try to bring up an organic situation where that person has to ask them for their phone number, because that would be admitting that they want to talk to each other.
Oh, even like that minutely, eh?
Yeah. This entire show is narrated by what can only be described as a pro wrestling narrator who takes it really seriously and dramatically. And it is just phenomenal. It is very light. It is always a series of vignettes. It is really funny to watch them just always fuck up their own plans, because what is the ultimate foil to a cold, logical manipulation but the fact that you have feelings? Yeah, you love and the cutest kind of shit. It's really, really good and funny. It's really good. So it's Love is War.
And what? Love is War? Okay.
Yeah. It has very, very little sexualization, but it does come up sometimes and it feels kind of weird. There is one episode in particular that kind of weirdly plays with consent, and when you get there you'll be like, oh, and I'm sorry about that. And it's not horrible and nothing happens and everyone's okay, but they want you to be unsure for a second, and that feels a little weird.
Oh, I see. Okay.
All right. We got two more, and I'm going to make them fast as well. Well, I'm going to make the first one fast because the other one is really good. So, Mob Psycho 100 is a really good show. Mob Psycho 100.
Okay.
Is this one?
I'm just writing these down. That's why.
That's fine. This one is also not on Netflix, and I'm sorry about that. Mob Psycho 100 is so wholesome and so fucking smart. It is 100%. These next two are both coming of age stories. I forget what is that called again, Hilary?
Oh shit, I don't remember. Show something.
Damn. No. Sorry, not in Japanese. In the.
Bildungsroman.
Yeah. There we go. I love that word. I just can't remember it. So they're both coming of age stories, but they deal with very different aspects of coming to age. Mob Psycho 100 is about a young middle schooler named Mob. This is a world where psychic powers are real, and Mob has psychic powers.
Has them?
But he has an he's the most powerful being in the universe, probably. But the thing is, Mob isn't really interested in having psychic powers. He's interested in having friends and maybe getting the girl he likes to like him. But this is all very difficult because Mob has severe social anxiety. And I think you could make an argument of whether or not you consider him to be on the spectrum. He doesn't do well in conflict. He doesn't do well in social situations. And he is working for a con artist. A con artist who has convinced him he is the most powerful psychic in the world, but has no psychic powers. And so, and will bring Mob along, because what he does is he just runs, I think it's called Spirits and Such, where people come in and be like, I think I'm haunted. And he'll like trick them into thinking he's a psychic and helping them. You know, he'll give them massages to help them exorcise spirits, or he'll Photoshop pictures of ghosts so the ghost isn't in there anymore. Like, he's kind of, he's a liar and he's a con man, but he's kind of like, you know, a silly con man.
Yeah.
And he has taught...
A bumbling, like Fagin from Oliver. You like him.
Yeah, exactly. And he has taught Mob, our main character, one very, very, well, two important rules. The first rule he taught him is that having psychic powers doesn't make you special. And the second one he's taught him is that Mob should never use his powers, like, in violence against human beings. And Mob believes these two things.
Right.
So
he should only use his powers for good.
Not just for good, but he shouldn't use them to hurt people, no matter what, because that's just a bad thing to do. And so this is our premise. And it is a story pretty much about power and what you do with power and how power can warp you. Because the majority of people that Mob goes up against are people with privilege and power, generally because they have psychic powers, and who think they are better than people, and who think they are better and can do whatever they want, you know?
Right.
So when you think about our society and think about the people who just, like, hurt others and are sadistic and, like, narcissistic, these are the people.
Yeah.
And these are the people
he's fighting.
Yeah, and these are the people that Mob is up against. And it is a really, really interesting way of kind of seeing that thought through and kind of seeing how do you break out of this sense of entitlement if you've lived your whole life thinking you're better than people and have stunted your own growth because of that. And the show has a lot of very fun and comical ways that it deals with them. There's a bunch of characters who you'll meet that you think are just assholes until you realize they're just the most wholesome people, and just your concept of what makes people good and bad has been kind of warped, and et cetera, et cetera. It's really fun. It's got 2 seasons. I think they're like 12 episodes each. I could be wrong, but it's just a good time. Yeah, they're 12 episodes. So that's a fun time. Oh, Psycho Pass, which I covered really, really quickly, I really want to quickly say has 2 seasons, a movie, and a 3rd season. Ignore all of that and only watch the 1st season. I'm sorry I didn't say that earlier.
Okay.
There's only 1 season. Anyways, Mob Psycho is real good. Like Cowboy Bebop, it has a really, really sick opening theme. And I think that's... Love is War also does have one. That's a really big thing for me. If you have an opening theme and an opening montage, like, it has to be
Music is important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would recommend just watching the intros. Hellsing doesn't really have an intro because each of them are almost like they're cinematic. But for all the other shows, watch the opening and then decide whether you want to see them because they're fucking phenomenal.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Mob Psycho is not horny. It's a really nice thing. It's not horny at all.
Wholesome.
There are characters who say pervy things, but their views are never... Like, you never see the world through their eyes. You never see them, like, take advantage of people in that way. You don't need to feel bad about that at all. It is wholesome. There's violence, but there's no gore. You know, it's like people get beat up, and psychic powers are amazing. And there is, like, a touch of horror if you thought, like, if a spooky picture of a ghost would scare you, there might be a spooky picture of a ghost here and there. But it is definitely something you can watch if you're a teenager and have a good time.
Okay. It's not going to give me, like, Saw nightmares.
No,
okay,
no.
What's your last one?
Okay, so the last one... All right, so the last one is hard to explain, and that's why I love it. So this last one is kind of surrealist, and it's really good, but it's very specific, so you need to kind of like get yourself in the right mood. So it's called FLCL, or as it's known, Fooly Cooly. Fooly Cooly is like Mob Psycho in the sense that it is a story about growing up when you're a young boy. But Fooly Cooly is more about how painful it is to go through puberty and how painful it is to be yourself and discover your identity. Fooly Cooly, one of the things I'm going to say right out the start, right off the gates, or whatever you want to say, is that it's 6 episodes. It's fucking 6 episodes. It's so lovely.
It's nice and short?
It's so short. You can watch it in a night. It's a great time. And Fooly Cooly is a bit weird. It's a bit more than a bit weird. It's a bit surrealist. It's very...
Yeah.
A lot of things happen it that you're not supposed to take literally. It plays with its idea of a world constantly. It plays with art styles. It plays with characters who break the fourth wall. It does these things, and it doesn't mind, because it's a very emotional show, and it doesn't want you to try to understand it literally all the time. Sometimes it's just about feeling what the characters are feeling.
Which is like such a puberty mood.
It is absolutely a puberty mood. It has a plot. It has a very, very straightforward science fiction plot, but that it's kind of sometimes hard to understand it as straightforwardly. And I promise from my heart to yours that if you don't get it, it's kind of okay. Because the show is not really about the literal things that happens. It is about our characters and how they see the world.
Okay.
How do I put this? Okay, let's talk a little bit about its horniness, because the show is a little more horny.
Well, it's about puberty.
It is.
Yeah.
So there's horniness, but it's always horniness with a bit of an edge, you know? Like, our main character is young. I forget how young he is, but he's young. Because he's going through puberty, you know? Like, and he wants to be an adult. And for him, being an adult is being stoic and serious and, you know, over kid shit. You know, I'm just tired of being a kid. You know, I don't want dumb stuff. I want cool stuff.
Also, common puberty trope.
Absolutely. Also, all of the adults in the show are the worst. They're manipulative. They're stupid. They're very stupid. They're childish. They're emotional. And they're just, like, impossible to look up to. He has no one to look up to.
Okay.
And our other character in his life is this cool, crazy lady who rides in on a motorcycle, and she is sexualized because she is the object of his desires. And at the same time, she has an edge to her. Because you realize that her sexuality has value to it, to him and to the characters, and the show knows it, and it's a point. You know, she has power, and it is not a power that is always good, and it is not a power that is pleasant. It is manipulative at times and kind of shitty. And it's not that kind of show where, because I've seen this where a female character is kind of abused or seen as a villain because she just happens to be sexual. That's not what it's like. You know, she's not like a femme fatale. She is a phenomenal character and one of my favorite characters because she doesn't give a shit about anyone else. She is ambitious, she is smart, she is powerful, and she isn't afraid of doing what she needs to do to get her end game. You mix that with our main character Nauta, who is just emotional and confused and embarrassed and ashamed, honestly, of his own sexuality and his own growth. Then you get this really interesting space to work in. I think it's very particular, and if you don't love it, I don't blame anyone, because it sometimes can be a little ephemeral. You know, it's hard to grasp and hard to touch, but I find it has very strong characters and very strong moments of, I understand this is how you want to live your life. Or I understand that you have become a better person through something, even if the cost might have been too much, you know? There's nothing horribly grim that ever happens. Nothing like, no one gets raped, no one gets murdered, really. Like, you know, it's a wacky, zany, fun, good time with low stakes, it seems. But you do get to understand the emotional impact that these things have on someone, which is a good time. And that's all I want to say, because I don't want to get too much into it. It is the most difficult to consume out of all of these, but it is also my favorite for that reason. And yeah, so the list again is Cowboy Bebop, which is free and fun. Everyone likes it, and it's very consumable. Hellsing Ultimate, which is deep and dark and like will hold you under the water a little bit in order for you to have that satisfying feeling of coming up for air. Love is War, which is just lovely and fun, and you don't need to think about it too much most of the time, and it's just funny and light. Psychopath, which is grim and fun and wants you to look at shirtless guys with cigarettes in their mouths and being like, oh yeah, he's a badass.
That's manliness.
Yeah. And ask questions about police and society, which is good too. Mob Psycho, which is wholesome and learning about becoming a better person. And Fooly Cooly, which is a little less wholesome and about becoming a better person. So, man, that was a lot. I enjoy anime, but that was a lot. I hope everyone can watch like one of them. Just watch the intro for a few of them and see how you feel. Honestly, I think they're fun and a good time. You can just go onto YouTube and say Cowboy Bebop opening and then scroll into the comments section where people say shit like, this is my groove that I live to, or like, you know, does anyone else cry themselves to sleep to this? You know, that's fine. Do that.
Wow, way to just out yourself on the internet, Arca.
Damn. I didn't know you'd know. I don't know if you have any extra thoughts or anything to add. I know this is a lot of things.
I was just going to suggest for like a piece of homework, everyone report on what your favorite anime is. And I will try and watch some of these, and I will report on what my favorite anime
Absolutely.
is.
I think the act of having a favorite of anything is the greatest thing a person can do. So finding a new favorite is always a good time.
Yeah.
Hey guys, did you know that 9 out of 10 scientists agree that you can listen to more charming extroverts at charmingextroverts.podbean.com? The last one thinks you should go on YouTube instead.